Welcome to Chapter 7. With Chapter 7, we're going to be looking at the skeletal system, and so this presentation is going to be your introduction to all of this. The skeletal system is composed of what's referred to as osseous tissue, and the prefix os and osteo, these are prefixes that relate to the skeletal system. So when you see these, you know that you're talking about something related to the skeletal system. Osseous tissue is a specialized connective tissue. If you recall, when we discussed connective tissues, we talked about them being composed of cells and an extracellular matrix that has a ground substance and protein fibers. We're going to see that with osseous tissue that bone is modified a little bit from that definition, but not too much. So it still hews pretty close to that line. There are 4 different kinds of specialized cells that we see in the skeletal system. Osteogenic cells, these are the stem cells that produce osteoblasts. There are osteoblasts, and we're going to see, or one way that I remember is what their function is that blasts build. Osteocytes are just grown-up osteoblasts that are completely walled themselves up into bony tissue. And then osteoclasts, and these are the ones that break down bone tissue. And so I always remember that clasts clash with the bone. So they break it down. They remove bone tissue, especially when it's been damaged. So they'll go in and clean up a damaged area. So the extracellular matrix of bone tissue is about 1/3 organic material. Collagenous fibers are a really important strength-lending material that's in the bone. So there's lots and lots of these collagenous fibers, and they make bone very strong. And so it's hard to break a bone because these collagenous fibers are there providing strength and flexibility to the bone. And then there are a variety of other proteins that are found in the extracellular matrix, but the primary fiber is collagenous fibers. The other 2/3 of the extracellular matrix, rather than being fluid, although there is some fluid there, especially when associated with the cells, the other 2/3 is primarily inorganic. So if this, by the way, what we're seeing is a cross-section in these slides. We're seeing a cross-section of bony material. And you can see that this stuff here is the extracellular matrix. These are the cells that are associated with this extracellular matrix. And all these little lines that you see, those are tiny little channels through the bony matrix that allows the cells that are sitting here kind of trapped in the bony matrix, allows them to communicate back to the blood vessels that are found in this central hollow cavity in the bone. Now, this is not the medullary cavity. This is just a hollow core, let's say, in the center of a cluster of cells. This is the same hollow core. It's referred to as the central canal for this structure here that's roughly a cylinder. It's round and runs the length of the bone. We're going to get into the construction of bone eventually, but don't be fretful if you don't completely understand everything that I just said. But that inorganic material is referred to as, or is primarily, a calcium phosphate salt called hydroxyapatite. So calcium and phosphorus as a salt here. And about 10% of it is calcium carbonate. So we got 2 calcium salts, hydroxyapatite and calcium carbonate. And then there's a variety of other salts. So we'll see that a function of the skeletal system is to store up mineral content for the body. Primary minerals are calcium, phosphorus, and carbonate ions. And then lots of other salts, including magnesium salts and sodium salts, potassium. So I know that we haven't spent a lot of time on, but that's magnesium. Na plus means sodium. K plus, that's potassium. F is the fluoride ion. There's the sulfate ion. This is the carbonate, or one of the, that's a little O, it should be a capital here. There's the carbonate ion and the hydroxide ion. So those are all ions that are found in bony material there in the extracellular matrix. So when we think about the functions of the skeletal system, primary function is support and protection. So it provides the framework for the body. It's the framework from which the soft tissues, or to which they're attached and from which they're hung. Also provides lots of protection. Think about the protective areas, the skull, the cranium there is very protective to the brain. The rib cage here is very protective to the lungs, the heart, those vital organs. And the pelvic region, the pelvis, is protective in females to the reproductive anatomy, and the bladder is protected in there as well. So we see lots of protective functions with the skeletal system. Movement is very important. Skeletal muscles attach to the bones. So we'll be looking at the muscular system in the next chapter, but these skeletal muscles are attached to the bone, and so let's see if we have an attachment up here at the ball of the humerus, and another attachment, let's say down here on the radius. Then when this muscle contracts, it's going to pull the radius closer to the humerus. We'll talk about all that movement in this chapter, or in the next chapter as we look at joints. But as the skeletal muscles contract, then it produces movement of the body. There's a fair bit of storage associated with the skeletal system as well. We store fat in bone. That's in the yellow marrow that's found here sort of in the central portion of long bones. These are long bones here because they're longer than they are wide. And in this portion there's a marrow cavity that is called the medullary cavity, that is stuffed full of yellow marrow. That's yellow because it's very fatty. All the minerals that we talked about just a minute ago are found stored in bone as well. And so it's a great resource that the body can turn to. Say if we're low on calcium or if we need other minerals, then we can set those osteoclasts to work and they will break down the bone, releasing these stored minerals. And then the last function that I could think of is a process called hematopoiesis, which is a real word, a weird word. Hemato means blood. So when you see this prefix, that means blood. Hema, I guess really actually, here's the prefix. Hema is the prefix. So hemato, and then poiesis, this portion of the word, this root, means, or I think of it as meaning production. So hematopoiesis is all the processes that lead to red blood and white blood cell production. And that is a function of the red marrow in bones. And red marrow, it's found here at the ends of long bones. It's found in the pelvis, in the sternum, the ribs, and even in many bones of the body we see lots and lots of red marrow. So the last thing that we'll discuss in this lecture is the shape of bones and how we classify bones based on their shape. Long bones are bones that are longer than they are wide. So these are all long bones. The femur is this one. That's a femur. And here we have a humerus. These are the femur is the thigh bone, the humerus is the bone in the upper arm. They're longer than they are wide, and they have enlarged ends. So those ends are referred to as the epiphyses. It's epiphysis is singular, epiphyses is plural. And these long bones act as levers that then can move body parts. And we find long bones in the limbs, so in the arms and the legs. These are all long bones with the exceptions of the wrist and the ankle bones. The carpals, those are the wrist bones. And the tarsals, these are the ankle bones. And so long bones, only in the appendages. Short bones are bones that are roughly equal in length and width. So we can think of them as cubes, bony cubes. Now that is a rough, there are no cubic bones in the body, but that gives you an idea of the rough shape. And we find the short bones found in small spaces, so small areas where we need a lot of mobility in this confined small area. And they're able to transfer forces among the different bones. And so here we see the carpals of the wrist. There's a lot of transference of forces that allow us to do a lot of very fine motor control there in the wrist. So if you move your wrist around as you're sitting here listening to me talk, as you move your wrist, that motion is the product of all of these different surfaces sliding against each other. And we've got lots, when you have short bones, you have lots of muscles that are pulling in all these different directions that allow for very fine control of that movement. So the short bones are mostly the carpals and the tarsals. Those are the two types of bones that we associate with this short bone category. Flat bones are a third category of bone classification. Flat bones are broad, they're flat, they often have a little bit of a slight curvature to them. And that big, flat, broad area provides a large surface for muscle attachment. So flat bones frequently have a lot of muscles or large muscles attached to them. And when we think about the flat bones of the body, the sternum, here's the sternum, built of 3 bones, by the way, and I will want you to know these 3 bone names. This is the manubrium. Here's the body of the sternum. And this little tip here, right there, is referred to as the xiphoid process. And a process is an extension of a bone. When we use that term process, we think of it as an extension. These are also processes. This is the acromial process. And this smaller one is called the coracoid process. And that is the scapula. So the shoulder blade would be another term for it. So flat bones provide this large flat surface where we can attach a lot of muscles there. The largest of the hip bones would be a flat bone as well, the ilium of the hip. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to. That was I had to check and make sure that I had some other information ahead. Okay, so flat bones. I'm going slightly out of order with the notes. Sesamoid bones are a 4th category of bones, and these are bones that are found embedded in tendons or associated with a joint capsule, and they're round. So I think of sesamoid bones, like a sesame seed is kind of roundish. They have that round shape. Now, the patellas, the 2 kneecaps, are examples of sesamoid bones, and they're the only sesamoid bones that we know for sure are going to be in the body. other sesamoid bones develop in the tendons or among, around a joint or at tendons, and they are there to help buffer the physical stress of movement. There's a lot of rubbing that occurs, and so as part of the development of the body, over time, there you can get these little pouches that develop that can help to prevent rubbing of a tendon, let's say, against a bone. And over time, those little pouches may develop into sesamoid bones. So we see them primarily at joints, like in the joints among the phalanges. So they're at the fingers and sometimes around the wrists and ankles as well. Sesamoid bones may develop. Irregular bones are bones whose shape doesn't quite fit into any of the categories. So this is the catch-all. Irregular bones are irregular because they're providing surfaces that allow for either articulation, that's joint movements, or for attachment of muscles. So these odd shapes, let's say, that we associate with the vertebra, this provides a location for muscles to attach so that we can get lots of movement out of the joints around the vertebra. If we look at the jaw, let's say, so the jawbone here, it's the fusion of two bones. There's an irregular shape. If you look deep into the eye sockets, we've got bones that have irregular shapes, or here in the nasal passages, there are bones of irregular shape. So irregular bones are just, I don't know how to describe this, so I'm just going to call it an irregular bone. And then last of all, we have what are referred to as sutural or Wormian bones. I love that name. I'm not sure why Wormian came to be as a term related to bones, but these are irregularly shaped bones. They're usually flat bones, and they develop in sutures or among the sutures. A suture is a kind of connection. It's a type of joint. Here's the suture. Notice that it's highly irregular, so lots and lots of surface area for attachment between the two bones. And these sutural or Wormian bones, they just show up. Not everybody has Wormian bones, but as we look at one of the cool things that we'll have in lab are some real skeletons for you to look at. And as we look at the sutures of these real skeletons, we're going to see that there can be lots of these Wormian bones found embedded in the suture as part of the development of these joints. So their location and their appearance is super variable. Not everybody has them. Most people have one or more Wormian bones in the sutures, and they're found mostly in the skull here. Okay, so there we have it. A little bit of an introduction to bones and bony material and to the shapes of bones that we see in the body.